Welcome back, friends. Thank you for tuning in to our Prehab series to keep you out of rehab, hopefully. We're moving up the chain, the kinetic chain. We talk a lot about this chain. We started at the ankle and the foot, we moved up to the knee, and now we've arrived at the hip. Let's talk about joint integrity before we get started. Each joint has a job that it's supposed to do. So let's recap. The ankle and foot is supposed to be a mobile joint, supposed to have more motion. The knee is a stability joint. The hip is unique. The hip is a mobile joint, but it's also a bit of a stability joint. So it wants to move around, okay? Some of the reasons that you may be having hip pain, lower back pain, groin pain, it could be from sitting, poor posture. It could be from activities that you do, what are called ADLs. Like, how are the activities of daily living? What affects you? Do you have a wallet in your back pocket? Do you carry a purse or bag on one side? Do you sleep in a curled up position? All of these things affect your body. Our bodies will mold to the lines of stress. So if we stress our body will kind of take shape to that. It's always remolding. So it's never too late to fix some of these things if it's things that you are doing to yourself. So that's your coach's job, and that is your job to figure out, what am I doing to cause this discomfort? Even if you don't have discomfort, it's worth investigating some of these things to help keep you out of pain. Okay, so let's talk about the hip. The hip likes to move. It's surrounded by a lot of powerful muscles. You have your hip flexors on the front, you have your quads, you have your iliopsoas, all these deep hip muscles. You have your muscles on the side, your glute med, your glute max, all these big glute muscles, hamstrings, lower back, all of this ties into the hip joint. Now the hip is really cool because it's a ball and socket joint. So it's all these muscles that just kind of move around. Very cool joint, but you have to give it care, you have to show it love, like your body, you have to take care of yourself. As always, when doing these things, make sure at the end you drink plenty of water. So we talked a little bit about joint integrity. Let's talk about the best way to rehab some of these things. So we want to first of all look at a common syndrome that most people have. It's called lower cross syndrome. So I'm standing to the side because if you think of your body as an X, okay, there's an X here. There's the anterior side of the body, there's the posterior side of the body. 9 out of 10 Americans have what's called lower cross syndrome or anterior pelvic tilt. That means if your body's a bucket, your hips are rotated forward, and this is the posture. Now the reason that we end up like this is because everything we do is in front of us. Every time we sit, we sleep, we brush our teeth, we eat, everything is in front of our body. What that does for us is that puts a lot of strain on our lower back. If you can see, my hips are back, my lower back is arched here. What that means is my hip flexors, these muscles here are tight, my stomach is weak, my hamstrings are usually tight, so everything is pulling me this way. So that will cause you to have kind of impinged, locked up hips in the front, and you'll often feel it in your back. So even though we're talking about the hip, remember, pain sometimes is above or below the joint. So if you're having back pain, it's a good idea to investigate what's going on at the hip. If you haven't, go back and watch the knee and ankle. That'll help tie in nicely to this. So how do we fix this anterior, most common pelvic tilt? This is what you need to do. You need to lengthen the hamstrings. You need to strengthen your core. You need to lengthen the hip flexors. And what that does is when you lengthen the hip flexors, it takes a lot of stress here off of the body. Your core, stomach is strong, helps pull you back here. Hamstrings are loose, so your body's not fighting itself. The hip then is happy in a forward and back position. Okay? Now let's talk about lateral position. Certain things can cause the hip to be off balance here. You could have one leg that's higher up. It could be from shoes. It could also be from just the way you're born. Okay, so one of the things that I look at with my clients is not only what their hips do forward and back, but what are their hips doing from a lateral position. As clients are walking, I watch to see if they have any hip drop on one side. If you notice that one side has a hip drop, that just means that that muscle, that glute med, some of the lateral hip muscles, are not strong enough to help support the pelvis. So you want to make sure that in addition to the forward and back, laterally you have that strength. That's where your coaches and physiotherapists come in. So take a look at yourself, look at what you're doing, see if some of this stuff can help. Now let's talk about recovery modalities really quick for that. Here's some great tools to start with loosening up the hip if you're having kind of acute or chronic discomfort. One of the great things to use, this is a lacrosse ball or a trigger point ball. Piriformis syndrome, you may hear that. That's something that comes from the hip and the sciatic nerve being impinged through the piriformis muscle. So this is a good recovery modality. You take the ball, you put it against the wall on your hip, and you're just scanning. You're looking for where you feel tight spots, and when you feel it, you'll hold pressure 30 seconds to a minute. Make sure you do both sides. While you're spending time with your body, see if you notice that one side may correlate with, like on this side I feel something. If you feel more on one side, does that correlate with pain you may be having on your knee or ankle? Usually it's all tied together. Try both sides when you're at home. Okay, so you can do lateral, like beside, the TFL we talked about last week, you can work on that. You can work on your piriformis, you can work on the glute. That's a great way to get started. I'm going through this fairly quickly, but at home I want you to spend, a minute to 2 minutes with this, okay? If it hurts, you're looking for a little bit, of discomfort, but you're not necessarily trying to go to where it hurts. You're not pain hunting, but you're just putting some awareness, attention to where the awareness is, better yet. This is your foam roller. So one of the big ones I always start everybody off with is the piriformis stretch. While on the foam rollers, you're kind of here, and you're leaning on that side, and you're scanning. When you feel that spot, you can even pull the knee up there, and that'll open up the hip there. You're getting posterior right behind the hip there. Okay? Another one that people often don't do is high up, not just the IT band, but high up on the lateral side of the hip there. This is great foam rolling. Like, I just feel it feels really good. And then we talked a little bit last week, front of the hip. So you're gonna wanna work to the side of the foam roller, using this knee to take some pressure off, and you're just really kind of digging in there, just loosening things up. You can rotate. Remember, just because we're talking about muscle groups, we're not talking about one specific muscle. All of the muscles, they work together, okay? They work in concert. So let's focus on, side of the quad, front of the hip. Mix it up. Some of the stretches that are great for the hip, if you're not doing already, hip flexor. We talked about this one before. So you're here, rolling your hips under you, driving forward here, getting the front of the hip, front of the quad. Okay. Adductor stretch, so inside of the thigh, you're sitting here, not bouncing, sitting tall, you can even press down. This is a great stretch, I love this one. If you're not doing this, another variation of the adductor stretch, it's kind of easing into it. You're here, just sitting hips back, and you can just hold, long hold. A minute is a great amount of time for this stretch. Okay. Piriformis stretch, we've talked about that one before. You're here, reaching through, pulling this leg to you, and holding it. One of my secret sauce stretches I'm going to share with you today. You guys are going to like it. All right, this is my secret sauce. This is my present from you. So you're here, shoulders stay flat, rotate the foot, keep that knee high. Now when you're here, just pull up at the knee, keeping shoulders flat. Really feel a good stretch through there. Once again, this is a good hold, about a minute or so. And then you also have legs straight, other leg pulling back to you. And you hold it 40 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute. The longer the better. I'm going to grab something really quick. This is your hamstring stretch. Now, since we're focusing on the hip, we're going to go traditional hamstring stretch. Do that one. Leg to the side. But we talked about adductors. We're going to get some more adductors. So we're going to open the thigh. All the way open there. Shoulders stay flat. Good long hold. So the order of those modalities, you're going to want to do the foam rolling techniques first with the lacrosse ball and the foam roller, and then right after that, you're going to go into the static stretches where you hold. Okay, now that's going to restore function as far as mobility from the hip. So we're talking about loosening the hip up, we're talking about motion through the supporting muscles of the hip and the lower back. Those are good to do on your off days. Those are good to do after big efforts. So if you just had a huge fitness class, you just did a long run, long bike, a long walk, or a long sitting day in the office where it's an off day and you're not doing anything, guys, those are your go-to. That's what you're going to want to do. Okay, now remember how I said joint integrity? So not only is the hip a mobile joint, but it's also a stability joint. So let's talk about some exercises that if you're not doing, you're going to want to throw these in your routine, like now, okay? One of the first ones is the hip hike. So I want you to think about standing tall. You're here. You're going to just lift this side up and then back. This leg doesn't move. You're not bending the knee. You're here. You're driving the hip up and back. And you do about 15 to 20. The progression would be hold the dumbbell on this right side, drive it up and down. What you will notice with this hip hike, you'll feel a little burn on the left hip, okay? That's supporting. So when you go here, this hip is now holding me. Think about it. When I'm walking, this hip is supporting. The other place you'll feel this hip hike It's the right side of the QL. So you'll feel this muscle right back here because it's helping. It's helping. Okay, now we're talking about the lower back working in concert with the hip. It's all tied in, guys. The next one is a sideline hip abduction. So abduction means we're pulling away from the body, away from the center line is abduction. So sideline hip abduction, you're laying on your side, toes are back. You're gonna lift up, a couple second hold, and back down. You're just working the lateral side of that hip. Okay, good reps for this, 3 sets of 15, it's a great start. You could do sideline hip abduction. Okay, so we're moving to the center line of the body. So we're gonna cross the top leg here, the whole place. Bottom leg, we're gonna pull the toes back. We're gonna lift up, 1, 2, hold, back, slow. That's gonna work the inside of the thigh there. Okay, big one, clamshells. Knees are bent, back here. On your side, you're not rotating. You're gonna just lift that top knee up, feet stay together. Couple second hold and back down. If you have a TheraBand, remember that beautiful stretchy band I told you about? Put that band around both knees here. Use it, you'll feel a glute med there. Okay, clamshells. Bridges are great. On your back, drive up the hips, squeeze those butt muscles, squeeze hamstrings, back slow. This is working that posterior chain. Remember when I was talking about the pelvis tilting forward? This is gonna help address that. We're strengthening the muscles on the back of the body. Reverse crunches. So we're gonna working on some of the abdominal muscles. So you're here, lower back is flat, legs come up, back slow. You should not have any back pain with any of these. If you notice back pain with this, you need to stop. We're working on keeping our lower back flat. You should feel it in the front of the hips and in the stomach. You can also do little bicycles. All great core movements. The big one, the big kahuna, the one everybody talks about. Planks, guys, planks. Okay, so you're in here. Now when you're in this plank, I want you to think about rolling your hips, squeezing the butt muscles, squeezing the quads. The pressure between your elbows here, I want you to push down and pull through, lock it in, hold that. That's your plank, guys. Planks are good for 30 seconds to a minute. After you get to a minute on your plank, change up the exercise. Do some plank movements, up, down planks, side planks. There's nothing special that happens when you get to holding a 5-minute plank. Okay, so after you've gotten to a few minutes, mix it up. Okay, those are some great strength training exercises that you're gonna wanna put into your toolbox. So strength training days would be days that you're hitting the gym, days that you're going on moderate runs or moderate walks. You don't necessarily need to throw in a huge strength training session if you've been out hiking or walking for 2 hours or an hour. It may be overwhelming for the body. Pick a day where you can accomplish getting it all done without, shocking your system too much. Okay? Now, you got some tools, let's put them into a program. Let's put them into a system for you. That's when it's effective, is when you have a working system for you. Okay, so I want you to think about day-to-day application. Think about once you have the mobility, once you have the strength, you still have to really pay attention to how are you sitting? How often are you sitting? How are you sleeping? What are you wearing? What are you doing? Those are going to be where you get the big changes. If you spend 3 days a week exercising and working on all this mobility work, but then you spend the other 4 days in compromised positions, you cannot outdo it. It's like your diet. You cannot out-exercise a bad diet. You cannot out-prehab or correct bad ADLs, which stands for activities of daily living. Figure out how to put your system in place, whether that's a standing desk, adjusting your bike, just getting up throughout the day and walking around. A lot of us are working from home now. I'm noticing my hip flexors get tight. I set alarms so I get up from my desk from my coaching and I get up and move around. Because I'll spend now, instead of out here, I just told my girlfriend, I'm used to getting 20,000 to 30,000 steps a day just coaching. I'm getting 10, I'm getting 8. Got to get up and move around, guys. I hope this information helps. Thank you for tuning in to the Hip Prehab series. Next week, we'll move up the chain a little more. Let me know how we're doing. Let me know if this is helpful. Let me know if you have questions. I would love to help on your journey. We have coaching available. We do individual coaching. So all of the coaching is geared towards each individual athlete if you're working with a trainer or client. Have a great day, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy!